Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second part of Subconscious Bloom, a conversation with my good friend, Dr. Karin Calde. This is, like I said, part two. The first part you can find through the Facebook community here. If you scroll below, I'll also pop a link in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, I will point you in the direction as well to where you can find this first part of the conversation. I gave a more formal introduction of Karin there. So if you want to hear more extensive background on her, go listen to that first one. Today, I'm just going to briefly introduce her, say that she has a background as a therapist, working both with individuals and with couples. She works with a lot of different modalities, but one of the things that's key to her work is being a licensed psilocybin facilitator here in the state of Oregon. And in the first part, we talked about kind of generally what it is to work with psilocybin and who might that be good for, what it's like, what it can help with. And in this second part, oh, I know we also touched on her work with menopause, working with women and perimenopause and menopause, and how psilocybin can help support that. Today, we want to continue the conversation and discuss what it is to work with psilocybin and beyond in relationship work, and dig into that a bit. And then toward the end, we'll also jump into discussing and sharing some of the journey that I had with Karin, and can give you a little bit of just some personal context around that. So Karin, welcome. Thank you for coming for part two of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this part of the conversation.
Yeah,
Continuing,
same,
yes.
same. It's so valuable. And I have to say, I was already invested in it, already interested in it, already believed in it. But now having had my own journey with you, it just, I feel even more excited about it. We'll get into that later. To begin, I really want to give some time to what it is to work in relationships with psilocybin, because this is such a key element of most people's lives and something that can be really tricky. You know, it's one thing to jump into your own individual work, but it's another to do work with another human being. And so, really interesting to have a way to get in to some of the areas, maybe like work with it in a slightly different way than just a typical therapy approach. So I guess to open the door to that, I'd love to know maybe your own, like, I don't know if you got into it through your own relationship work or or through clinical work, but what first made you consider using psilocybin or otherwise as a part of work with couples?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's definitely something that I noticed through my personal experiences that it was really helpful. It really gave me a different perspective on things and just opened up a lot of doors for me. And when I did my training, I was really interested in learning more about how psilocybin could be supportive of relationships. And so we had the opportunity to do a research project during our training, and mine was focused on psilocybin and relationships. And there wasn't a whole lot of research at that point, but there continues to be more, and there was some really helpful information. Um, and the truth is that most people, when they think of doing psychedelics and doing relationship work, the first go-to is MDMA. That has the reputation to be really helpful because it helps us to kind of quiet that fear response and clear away all those blocks that might be getting in our way of really seeing things as they are and connecting. And we get this oxytocin rush with MDMA that feels really good. So we have this a lot of very loving feelings, and it is wonderful for relationships. And psilocybin has a completely different feel
Mm.
and can also be very supportive. Now, go ahead. Do you have a
Oh
question?
yeah, no, I'm so curious. I was just gonna, and I think that's where you were taking it, is just to learn what that difference is.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what your motivation for using it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that for most people, doing psilocybin on their own is often most helpful, even when you're working on your relationships. Not always. I have done it, did do it with a couple recently, and I was honestly a little bit concerned because there were some red flags for this couple, but it ended up being a really beautiful experience for them. But it is a little bit different. You're going to be taking a much lighter dose. You're going to be focusing a little bit more on the relationship rather than your own things that might be impeding the relationship. So, I mean, that's simplifying a little bit, um, but I find that a lot of people come to me for relationship support because they want to work on things like self-acceptance, which can help them in their relationship. They might have an anxious attachment style. That's something that I commonly see, and mushrooms are super helpful for. It can be really beautiful. They might want to do I don't know if I already just said doing some forgiveness work perhaps.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things, different ways that it can be helpful. And there's so much good research now that's coming out. They find that it helps things like helping people to shift. There was a great 2017 study that people reported it helped them shift from feeling really disconnected to feeling connected, to from emotional avoidance to acceptance. And this really helped them in their ability to face difficult memories or conversations. They had a greater ability to feel compassion and love. And all of this lasted for as long as the study followed up with them, which was, over a year. So that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm so curious when like how that looks in just very like, especially for those people watching this who maybe have done it before, like what it is like, because like for me it was this very deep kind of like inward experience, right? So you said you take a lighter dose. Are you conversing during it? Are you having your own individual experiences, like inward journeys?
Yeah, so if people were to do it together, it's still very inward when you do it in this way, where you
Mhm.
have the eye masks, you're really going inside. Um, you typically go inward, and then, perhaps a few hours into it, as you start, yeah, as you get past that peak,
Mhm.
then as you're coming down very, very gradually and very gently, you might have that impulse to share and to connect.
Mhm.
And that can be a really good opportunity to do that. Um, I
And then are
mean,
you guiding
mhm,
that? Like, are you helping to facilitate that conversation?
I would just be getting in the way.
Okay.
Because the mushrooms really do open up that inner healing intelligence.
Mhm.
And I won't mess with that.
Yeah.
If it's MDMA, I might do a little bit more guidance, and MDMA is a little bit more flexible that way.
Mhm.
But mushrooms, they don't want to be controlled. They really
Yeah.
take their own path, and so I just really try to hold that very gently and help to prepare people ahead of time for that
Mm.
experience. And then I only really come in if someone's really having a hard time or if they
Mm.
ask me to remind them of things and things like that.
So that's an interesting, so something that's coming up for me now is like, what would be, like, where would a couple be in their healing journey together for this work to be appropriate? Because I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, I could be totally wrong, that might not unfold even in the way the mushrooms intend for it to, if they're if there hadn't been some prior work done?
Yes, and that is such a great point because this is not for people who have a high degree of conflict,
Hmm.
or any violence in their relationship, any kind of abuse, anything like that, that can make things worse.
Hmm.
And it can be unpredictable in that way. So, because it really is an amplifier of what is. And so, if
Hmm.
you've got a lot of that conflict, it can really make that worse. And so, you don't want that. So,
So
you want,
where,
mhm.
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So the more work that you've done ahead of time, the better. And it really does create this wonderful foundation that you can then build upon.
Yeah, I'm imagining it like maybe ideal if there's some um walls that are still in place despite the efforts to like move through the work. Like does it kind of help to like do that little breakthrough that needs to happen
Yes,
under the
absolutely.
surface? Yeah.
Yeah, it can help people who are just feeling stuck about things.
Hmm.
There's some part of them that is protecting them for some reason. And so it can help to soften those back. And
Hmm.
so that you can access something deeper and something truer that is, it can be very healing and really help with deepening a relationship.
So what like because everybody's going to be on a different part, maybe doesn't even know where they are exactly on their journey as a couple, right? And so how would you help somebody define for themselves um, if they're in the appropriate place to do this work?
Hmm, great question. I'd want to find out, there's some general question for everybody, like, um, how how much do you believe that we're all really responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, behaviors, things like that? So
Mm-hmm.
taking that personal responsibility
Yeah.
is really important. Kind of having a basic understanding of how mushrooms might work.
Hmm.
People who are not don't have a really heightened sense of that need to control.
Hmm.
We all have some of that,
Hmm.
but those who are really tightly wound and have a hard time letting go at all, they're going to have a harder time.
Yeah.
If they want their partner to change and they're really invested in, well, if they just do the change, then everything will be fine. And
Uh-huh.
and we can all have a little bit of that, and that's understandable. But again, really taking some personal responsibility is goes a long way in this work. And then also just feeling like you really are pulled to do this work, and you're not being pushed at all by your partner or being
Mhm.
convinced by someone else that you should do this. So those are some of the basic things that I would say would really need to be in place.
Would you recommend that people have their own individual experience prior to doing that so they have some familiarity with it?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. So, yeah, it's usually not a great idea for people to have their first experience with
Yeah.
mushrooms as a couple, although that was indeed the experience that I had with this couple. And so there was some unknowns, but yeah, because everyone responds to mushrooms differently.
Mhm.
Um, Depending on a lot of different variables. But some people are really, really sensitive. Some people need a lot more or have a lot of defenses that really need to kind of be softened. And so they might need more mushrooms to do that. And it's harder to tell that first time in. Some people don't like it.
Mm.
And I mean, that's also a possibility. And so having a prior experience can really, and having that relationship with the mushrooms is a good idea. It's a good idea.
So I know you work with psilocybin with couples with MDMA. Any others?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the works, but
Okay.
yeah.
Would you like, do you leave it up to the couple to say this is the medicine I'm interested in, or do you recommend it based on like the dynamic of the couple?
I'd say it's a two-way conversation. I
Mhm.
mean, you're in charge of your experience, and of course, then it's also me being comfortable, facilitating this experience and wanting to make sure it's safe for my clients and make sure it's safe for me, all of those different things. And so, yeah, I would say it's a two-way conversation.
What can you give us a little bit of a understanding of like where you might recommend one versus the other?
Yeah, I mean, if people are really wanting to have a joint experience,
Uh,
um, I might lean a little bit toward MDMA. I mean,
mhm,
mushrooms are great together in certain ways, especially if you've had the experience before. And, maybe if you want to go, and if you just want to have, you've both had beautiful experiences with mushrooms, and you really just want to share that together,
mhm,
and that you're okay with that lighter dose, that lighter experience, and that can be beautiful. But if you're really wanting to work things out and be able to talk during the experience, and go deeper, then I might recommend something like MDMA.
okay, okay. And
Um,
then, oh, go
mhm.
ahead.
And also, I mean, but MDMA is also harder on the body. And
Oh,
so I also want to understand what medications you might be taking,
mm,
um, your age, if you're in menopause, all those things,
mm.
because that can have an influence as well. Yeah.
Like just like the impact will be greater to the physical
Yeah, there are more
health.
side effects, so it's not, mushrooms are all natural, and you
Mhm.
just, there's not much, like you might feel pretty tired or have a headache that next day, but MDMA, a lot of people get that jaw clenching. They get the headache too, but they
Mhm.
might also have a dip in mood that can last for a few days. And they just feel a little bit more worn out afterwards.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get the view here. Hmm. Okay, I was trying to fix the. I think I'll do that. There we go. Okay. um, I wanted to see if there was like a story or two that you could share to help clue us into what it might like what I know you shared some research and maybe there's more research to share, but I think it's always helpful to hear an example or two of like what could happen if I were to do this. What are the possibilities? What are the doors it could open?
Yeah, and I'll share stories, but I'll first say a little bit more about the research, if that's okay. Um, you know, uh, Again, there's so much that can be experienced on your own with mushrooms that can be so beneficial for your relationship. Um, there was another 2018 study that looked at a really well-validated personality measure. And what they found was that people after taking mushrooms scored higher on measures such as openness. So they were more curious, more willing to hear their partner's perspective, willing to try new things, greater flexibility. There was more warmth. They were a little bit more on the conscientious side. That was a smaller effect, but also, and I hate this term, but there's one of the main things that this measure looks at is something that they call neuroticism. But what that really is about is that tendency to worry and ruminate and have and be more reactive emotionally. Um, and that can be a significant a predictor of conflict in relationships and even divorce. And
Mm,
there was a significant change on this measure. So, and they were also a lot more open. And so, oh, I think I mentioned that, but it's what was so interesting about that is that usually ends up kind of declining starting in midlife, and it actually went the other way after taking psilocybin, and significantly. And so, I mean, what all that means is higher relationship satisfaction, better communication, more secure attachment in your relationships, a greater capacity for empathy, a better ability to resolve conflict, less defensiveness in relationships. I mean, those are all, the things that it can help you do if you have proper integration. And so, that's of
Yeah.
course the other thing is you can have all these insights, but then what do you do with them? And so having that support afterwards can make a big difference. Um, so one client of mine um, came to me because his partner wanted to be a little bit more relaxed about the structure of their relationship. And he understandably had some issues with that and was very anxious about it and tried lots of different things. And he ended up having just, a really beautiful experience, a lot of visuals of how they were these two different people that could go and live their own lives and then come back really beautifully together. And he was a lot more confident in um, pursuing his own interests and knowing and trusting that his partner loves him and that they can always come back together. Um, and, a side effect or an unintended effect was that he also ended up having this really beautiful shift in his relationship with his kids that became really a lot more lighter and more playful and beautiful. And so, I mean, I could go on and on, but that's just one. I mean, there are again many, and I'll just say just my own experience in that I had had a rift with my father that was really painful, and the MDMA helped me really soften around him and understand from this really deep in this really deep way, where he was coming from and why he experiences life the way he does, and it helped me forgive in this really beautiful way. So, just a couple of examples of how that work can or how
Yeah.
psilocybin can work. And again, this is people doing it on their own
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
how beautifully that can then impact their relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so curious about kind of like the chicken and the egg thing here because it seems like that the medicine can work in this really maybe more fluid way, more accessible way with prior work. And yet it also seems like maybe the medicine can open the doors to some work that maybe like wasn't accessible. And so
Oh,
maybe it could work like both
yes.
ways.
Okay, and can I give you an example?
Yeah.
Beautiful experience I had, and I'm telling you all these wonderful, beautiful experiences. Sometimes they're far less dramatic,
Yeah.
but but this is a good example because this was a much older man who had worked in the mental health field for years and years and years, but really hadn't done a lot of his own work.
Mm.
And his experience was about releasing a lot of trauma. And he didn't have a lot of visuals. It was very physical in nature. And what the bigger experience was for him was how it softened him in the weeks to follow. So he found that he was um, more compassionate with his patients. It was a little bit harder. He didn't have that harder exterior. Um, and so it wasn't that it was easy, but it like softened all these protectors around him that enabled him to then go in and do some more healing and more understanding of why he does what he does and how he could make a shift. So, yeah, sometime for him, I think the biggest shift came afterwards as he
Mm.
continued to work with me and capitalize on the neuroplasticity that was happening in his
Yeah.
brain in the days and weeks that followed his actual journey.
And that brings up what you mentioned before, which is just the importance of integration. And I think that that's so key because I've seen this in my own work too. I don't facilitate, right? But I work with people in energetics, and oftentimes people will go have these incredible psychedelic experiences. They'll go and, whether it's, well, whatever, you name the experience, but then it's just kind of put on the shelf as like this thing that I did, and it was amazing. But then without that integration work, it's kind of like seen as this, like held as this separate thing. And and it's, to me, like the way I make sense of it is like it's not brought all the way through into the body. Like we go access this kind of like unity consciousness, and then without bringing it all the way down and through. Mushrooms feel like, having now had my own experience, it felt like it kind of like was at that core level a little bit. Like maybe that's why, like, this person you were talking about had that physical experience. Maybe it accesses that a little bit more. But I'm I'm really curious about that piece because I think that's skipped. If you don't do it with a facilitator, if you don't do it after like the retreat you went on, the integration work, that it can sometimes be this like separate thing from life.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so important because, yeah, if we just have this journey, it can be, yeah, this beautiful experience, and it can also turn into spiritual bypassing if we end up having, oh, this was so great. Oh, I want to do it again sometime, and I'm going to have this experience and this experience. But if you never bring it into your daily life or make any changes, then yeah, it's just this really cool thing that you did.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the journey is really just the first step to the work.
Yeah.
Um, it's so much more impactful if you then, dig in. It's like, well, how can I live this experience as if it were true? How can I bring this into my life? What does that really mean, and what can that look like?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, doing the work afterwards is not easy. Um, so for some people it can be easier, but yeah, it's about going back to the normal day-to-day, life, which can feel so different, and then translate that into some change.
Yeah, and speaking from my own experience now, after doing a deeper journey with you, um, it it was like like, well, like it's hard to put it into words, right? Like it's hard to put into words. It's hard to, because it's this journey that's happening in this, like, not completely conscious place. And so to like remember it, to make sense of it, to even try to grapple with like how to speak it into words, it's like a little bit of a tricky process to do, because it's like I've had my experience over the last couple of weeks has been people asking me like, what, tell me about it, and I'm happy to share. In fact, through my journey, um I I was given a lot of like messages, and for myself, but also for a lot of people in my life, and that have been
Mm-hmm.
really touching to share. But when people have asked me to share, I've been like, uh, like, because to put it into words can be tricky. And so it just having someone to help support that integration and help to bring it into conscious awareness so that it can be worked with and can be integrated I can see how it's such a critical step.
Yeah, I mean that's what they say about psychedelics, is that the experiences are so often ineffable.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
how do you, because it is experienced at in a different place in the body and in the mind. It's not that rational linear part of the brain that we are so accustomed to accessing on a day-to-day basis. And
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I've been like bear with me because I'm going to jump around here.
Right. Right. And your brain is jumping around. There are all these amazing
Yeah.
connections that are being made.
Yeah.
Parts of your brain are talking to one another that don't generally do that. And so that enables all these wonderful new ways of looking at things and thinking about things. It can be really beautiful. So part of the first part of that integration is putting a narrative to it, putting the story together. And sometimes that can be with words, and sometimes that might be with art of some sort. Maybe you draw your experience, maybe you dance your experience. Everyone can do it in a different way. Um, with the integration appointments that I have with people following their journeys, we typically do it in words, but then I give you suggestions for how you can continue to do that in other ways as well. Um, and then also, asking about, where did you really feel this in your body?
Mhm.
And looking at how we can maybe anchor in some of those emotions. What is it that you want to hold on to? All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so powerful. And I'd love to share. I know I told everyone that I would share a little bit about my own journey, and now here I am going, how do we how do we get into that? So yeah,
Yeah. Well, and maybe you can, of course, share exactly what you want to share, but perhaps even focusing on some of those key things that really stood out to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm kind of tracking backwards now because that integration conversation we had was really helpful to anchor in some of those key pieces that stood out. It was also really helpful, and just for those people who haven't done an experience, I think I was so curious, like, what's this going to look like? And I had some nerves because I'm really sensitive to substances. And so I was a little like, what, once I'm there, is it going to be something that I just want to get out of, Is it just going to, because I've had that experience before with other
Mm,
substances. And so the, I just want to say, I feel called to say this right now, that journeying with you, someone who is of such high integrity, I think was a really key element of it.
mm,
Um, and so if anybody listening to this hasn't done this before, I think that like if you're going to do a bigger dose, you're going to, I know the bigger dose is personal, right? But like
mhm,
if you're doing a deeper journey, to have someone that is holding that space with you and helping you to craft the intention, because I think that's probably just as important as the integration on
mm,
backside.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That foundation really is key. So you're helping to give the mushroom somewhere to go, or
Yeah.
else it can't really go anywhere. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, taking some time. And the work really does start when you decide that you want to do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's where I mean one of the interesting things to watch in myself following has been the battle between my left and my right brain, which I know we've talked about and how it's like not really important to reconcile those things, but where you're like really trying to make sense of something that has accessed more than you can maybe make sense of.
Mhm.
So and I don't exactly remember why I brought that up except for um yeah, anyway, setting the intention, letting yourself go to that place that you go in the direction that you are wanting to be taken. And and for me, I just had such a beautiful experience. And I know it isn't always beautiful. I would imagine that it's always helpful in some capacity. And like we talked about chicken or egg, like might it be that you need to that this is the way you're taken in to the work you need to do, or just the way you're like kind of reflecting on work you've done and helping to hold it in a different way, helping to hold it. For me, it was like landing in work that I've done and expanding it and seeing like it in this in this way that holds like even more than I could have imagined, like how what it is beyond just myself. And yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
are there key pieces of your experience that you want to share?
Um, yeah, without going into too much detail, because I did sit with one friend who was like, I want to hear it all, and we talked for like 3 hours and we could have kept talking for another three.
Yeah. Yep, yep, that can happen.
So, that's where I'm like, how much to share in like 5 more minutes or whatever. But this is actually an interesting thing. So my big takeaway, and we talked about this in my integration, was just interconnectivity, right? But I feel like that's the takeaway. Like, if somebody's to, and tell me if I'm wrong here, like, it seems like the takeaway I hear from a lot of journeys with psilocybin, with ayahuasca, with, and you name it, right? Like that's in that similar realm, that there's this like how I'm interconnected, how like that unity consciousness, this how I sit in the grander like scheme of life. And I'm wondering um if that's the case. Like is it a journey into that and back in whatever way you need it to be, but is that kind of the general place
Not for
okay,
everybody,
okay.
but is commonly because again, like I said in the last video, it calms that default mode network. And that is the network of the brain areas that where we have that sense of self. And
Yeah.
so when that starts to soften back, we
Mhm.
realize how connected we are and how we're not just this isolated being in the world,
Yeah.
that yeah, we are all part of something greater. And so that can come through in the experience and often does, but not necessarily. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'm also really curious about I mean, I was very much taken like by the hand with the mushrooms into an experience of what it is to be like a mushroom and to be in the forest and to be in the ecosystem. And one of the things that I was pointed to in the journey because I was taken into an experience of like all the different important relationships in my life and and I started to then want to touch into relationships with people who have passed. And the mushroom said, "Oh, this isn't my work. You need to do ayahuasca for that." And so I'm like, and that's where my right, left radar like, what did the mushrooms really tell you that, or did is something like deep and like is it true? Does it make sense? But I I'm curious if like the medicine that you're using takes you to these different orientations of looking at things, right? Like the mushrooms took me to the forest and to the forest floor. And do other substances take you to a different aspect of the natural world of the universe? Um is this my experience, or is this applicable to other experiences?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit of both.
Hmm.
I think you are so connected to nature and the trees and everything already. That's
Hmm.
part of your world, and so it's more likely to be part of your experience. And also, mushrooms are known to really help people connect with the environment. I think there's something about them, being connectors and being yeah, it's part of what they are and help us see as well. I think that there is something to that. um MDMA is different. It helps us go on inside and understand ourselves and in a very safe, warm, loving way. It really is very heart connecting. So that's a different feel. Ayahuasca tends to help people with generational questions that they might have, also questions about themselves. But I haven't done ayahuasca, so I can't speak to it personally. But that is what I've heard from other people too.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, like I said, I could go on and on and on about my own journey because it was just such a cool experience. But I think I'll just sum it up with I've done a lot, as you know, a lot of my own personal work. And it reached some areas that I hadn't quite been able to like get at yet. And that was a really cool
Mhm.
aspect of it. And it was just it was so valuable. I mean, it was just really beautiful. It was a really incredible experience, but also deeply valuable. And I just can't imagine um I can imagine that it's not, you've told me, right? It's not a beautiful experience for everybody, but it's a valuable experience, I think, probably for everybody.
Yeah, and every experience that I've had facilitating, it always gives people something. And it might not be what they were looking for, but it always seems to be what they need. I do
Yeah.
believe that. And and just to also mention that you really did, one of your intentions was about relationships, and this seemed to really be supportive of that too. So I just wanted to, connect that to our earlier conversation about relationships in general too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really, it was really inside. Yeah, I think for me, it was like this. I've done so much personal work, and then my one of my questions was, how does that unfold into like more aspects of my life and in relationship? And I didn't have any expectations of what that would be.
Hmm.
I tried to go into it really open, but I was kind of like, what are you going to show me? And I was shown exactly what I needed to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am so grateful for the experience and welcome any questions, either, like last time, available in the comments for any questions you might have about my experience, about Karen's work. I think in any regard you're open to answering questions about this work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know I see Sherry, you're here with us. Did you have any questions you wanted to ask before we finish up? Maybe she's not there.
Yeah.
Maybe she's listening. So Karen, is there anything else you want to add about anything that we've talked about today?
Um, there is one thing that I think could be really useful for people to hear, and that is that, like I've been telling Katrina, it's been so wonderful to be part of her experience, partly because she she is so healthy in so many ways. Not only has she done so much of her own work, so she's done therapy and spiritual work and all of the things, but she's also physically healthy. And so when people have really healthy livers and kidneys, you can help the experience. And so if you drink or do a lot of other substances or eat a lot of heavy processed foods or things like that, though they can be heavier on your body, and it can influence how you react to the mushrooms. Um, you had, as I had, pointed out to you, you had this really wonderful transition out of the medicine. And I think that was largely because of how healthy that you are.
Mm.
It's not to say that people who drink and do other things, can't have beautiful experiences, because they do, but it just makes the whole experience a little bit easier.
Mm.
um you came out of it, and you were so still the whole time, and then you afterwards you took your mask off, and you were like, wow, that was amazing, and blah, 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 blah. And then you just start talking, and you had lots of energy, and even though you did feel it, you did feel tired, it was not this heaviness that sometimes I get with clients.
Mm. So it doesn't necessarily change the experience like in it. It's more the body being able to process it out.
Yeah, and whether or not it actually impacts the experience, I think it could, but I really don't know that, and there's no data about that. But yeah, but definitely the physical piece of it for sure is easier.
So if somebody like if somebody's listening to us and they're like suddenly feeling nervous because maybe they aren't the most physically healthy, like, oh, I don't know if I would want to do that.
Yeah.
What would what would be like something to know, to like,
So, one of the things that psilocybin can help people with is stop some of those more addictive or substance using behaviors. And so it's again, it's not that it can't help, but if you were to cut down on drinking, that could be really helpful. Or start eating healthier, especially in the weeks leading up to a journey. That could be healthier. In another way, meditating is so supportive of a journey. I think it really helped you. I think that was a really big plus for you. You were used to these different levels of consciousness and could navigate your way through that without a lot of fear. And so that can be really helpful and also be really grounding for people if things get intense, which they can. So meditating is another big one. Again, you don't have to, but it can be very supportive.
yeah, yeah, and just being able to go with it, maybe not fight against it as much.
Yeah, it can help you stay in your body rather than feeling like you're getting swept away and needing to come out of it as much as possible because it's just too overwhelming. Yeah.
I will say a funny, I'll add this in because we were just talking about alcohol, a funny aspect of my journey. And it's not something I was asking a question about it. It's not something that plays a huge role in my life. I
Mhm.
definitely have alcohol, but I'm not a huge drinker. But it was like one of the things the mushrooms wanted me to know was how much they hate alcohol.
Yeah.
And they kept like reiterating that and like sharing it in different ways. And I mean, to the point where like even at certain points I like would recall having a glass of wine or something and I was just feeling this like massive wave of disgust. and
Yeah.
and so it doesn't surprise me. I've had several friends who have done a journey and then come out of it. They did the journey more because of their relationship with alcohol, and they came
Hmm.
away from it like not wanting alcohol anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
haven't had a drink since our session because it just feels like it wasn't even part of it for me, but it was just like,
Yeah.
oh, like it doesn't mix. And so my point is um just that I could see how maybe having that out of the system for a little while leading up to a journey could be helpful, knowing how much it seems to despise alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're drinking, you actually need more psilocybin.
Mm,
So it actually can dampen the effects of it. So that's another motivation for people.
yeah.
But yeah, I've had some really beautiful, there's that word again, experiences with people who have either stopped drinking or, they had been abusing in the past alcohol, or they were trying to cut down, or even they really wasn't part of their intentions, like you said, and that comes up for them. Oh, God, I really don't want to do that again. Or, oh, I don't even want it anymore. I'm not even tempted. So it's been really interesting to see that happen with people.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. They seem to have a very strong opinion about alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I see you popped up, Sherry. Did you have any questions you wanted to layer in?
Hi. Sorry, I was
Hi.
driving. Today's one of those days where I'm like trying to work it all in.
Yeah.
Um, no, I loved hearing about your experience and yeah, what the mushrooms had to say.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, the integration and the preparation work is, yeah, so key. And it's so on my list. I'm wanting to do another big journey, but it's hard to find the time, to
Yeah.
set aside, because you have to be unavailable.
Yeah.
So,
And that's such a good point too, because not only is it about that day, but then most people need a good day afterwards to recover, be able to contemplate, reflect. And sometimes it can take, some people feel a little bit off their kind of foundation a little bit.
Hmm.
for some days afterwards. And so working it into a time when you can make some time for that and give it some space can
Yeah.
be helpful. Yeah.
And for the integration as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
because um, that's important too. Yeah.
That's such a good point. That is just on a very t tangible level. Like I needed that full day, you're off, right? And then the next day I needed to just not have anything I had to do. And then the rest of the week I was able to do normal life, but I wasn't like fully um like I was present in a slightly different way. So
Right.
Yeah.
information, if you're considering this, like what do I need to manage for my life in order to make it happen?
Yeah. I mean, it's like your nervous system is kind of recalibrating.
Yeah.
But I also like to say it's like we've taken the snow globe and we've gone like this, and so everything's kind of settling down, and you're finding your new normal again afterwards. So it can take a little time. Some people just feel great; they have this incredible afterglow, and they just want to go do all the things, and other people just need some more downtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was on a Zoom meeting a couple days following, and everybody was like, Katrina, why are you're like glowing? I'm like, it's the mushrooms. They did cause a glow.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. It's so exciting. I mean, I just see so much more research popping up right and left about this, and it's just
Can I
really,
interrupt you?
yeah.
There are a couple two or three research studies now also talk about it improving sexual satisfaction and sexual functioning.
Oh, interesting.
So that's the other piece I left out that can be really helpful for people too.
Yeah, that's an important one, especially for the relationship realm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I invite anybody who wants to pop any questions in the comments. Karen and I will be there, um, and and happy to respond to any inquiries, any questions. You can reach out to Karen. Um, it's just what's your email again, Karen?
So it's Karin with an I, Karin at Dr. Calde, and that's DrCalde.com. And you can also go to my website, which is drcalde.com. Yeah.
And I'll pop both those things in the or your website in the comments and in
Yeah.
the description on YouTube. So
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you so much for this. It's been so wonderful to talk about it, to journey with you, all the things. And it's just really, really fun to continue the conversation and share about this beautiful work you do.
And Katrina, you're such a gift, and it has been my pleasure to have these conversations with you, but absolutely to be able to sit with you. So it's been, yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cherry, for being here with us. And
Thank you.
yeah, who knows? Maybe at some point we'll have a part three.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.